afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. You have Alyssa Corum and Ed Carson here. We're going to analyze the action in the major indexes. What a day it was, Ed. So we're going to get into that a little bit and take a look at a couple of stocks that are of note today. What do you have for us?
Yes, Ali, yeah, it was definitely a wild day. We're going to take a look at Tesla, Ford, and Microsoft that all had some interesting action.
All right, well, let's do it. First, we are going to look at the NASDAQ here. You can see a clear move here. We had severe losses in the early going, but the NASDAQ steadily rose and really powered higher by the end of the day in terms of erasing the vast majority of those losses and closed down only 0.5%. Meanwhile, the Dow edged positive for the day, closing up 15 points or about 0.05%. And we also had the S&P 500 up 0.1%, the Russell down 0.7%. So Ed, put this into perspective for us a little bit. How should we be thinking about what happened today?
Yeah, I mean, this was wild action, and really it's going to take more days to know how this goes. Today, we fell back almost to where we were on January 29th, like a few weeks ago. That was the last pullback. Not saying that's what was triggering it, but the 13,000 level, we rebound from there. So that was really positive. Obviously, we've been falling back for a number of days. And so it's hard to know. I mean, it's just like if we rebound, maybe this is the beginning of a nice rebound, and that's how it'll look. Or maybe if we go back to early September, and I don't want to say this is, in early September, we had a big drop. Now, this was a huge drop. And then the next day we sold off, came all the way to the 50-day line, but rebounded, erased nearly all the losses, actually closed above the 21-day or just below it. And then the next day we sold off again and went by the 50-day. So I think we're going to need to see. I mean, we always need to see what happens next. But boy, we did fall. A lot of big growth stocks had suffered some serious damage before rebounding. It's definitely interesting time for the market.
Right. On the one hand, maybe this is all of the shakeout that we needed to start rebounding higher. But on the other hand, as you mentioned, when you just see a string of losses like this, even though we closed well off of the lows for the day, similar but not exact, of course, action that happened previously led to a very choppy period in the market. Again, we're not saying that the exact same thing is going to happen. There are a lot of different factors at play now than there were at that time. So how should investors be positioning themselves ahead of tomorrow's open, do you think?
Yeah, and just thing is, this is one reason why we talked about selling near the top, maybe when the market was looking extended. It makes a day like today easier, either because you can hold through that big sell-off, and because a lot of stocks fell really sharply, or even if you sold at the lows today, at least you had some profits higher. The average selling price would be a little better. It wasn't like you sold all that. So there's different ways of handling it. But you still have to have somewhat of a defensive mindset. And it's certainly not an aggressive mindset. A lot of charts look messed up, after today's action. There weren't a whole lot of stocks to buy anyway, to be honest with you. And so to go straight down and straight up, that's not normal either. I mean, it'd be great if we could consolidate for a couple of weeks, charts repair themselves, buy points set up. But, you still have to be ready for the market still to come down, potentially. Don't necessarily assume that it's going to end.
Yes, and one stock in particular drawing a lot of eyeballs today, really this week so far, Tesla. Look how much this stock was able to come off of its lows of the day, closing down about 1.8%. And on Monday's session, we did see the stock falling sharply as well, down almost 9%, Ed, after a pretty massive run and breaking below the 50-day line for the first time in quite a while here. Do you think investors would be making a mistake to try to catch Tesla on sale here?
I mean, you just don't know where it's going to go, because we've seen various times that it's had really strong sell-offs, even in this big run. So you could buy it here, and then it could come down to 600, 500, and you don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, maybe this was the bottom. Okay, I mean, just like the market, don't want to say it isn't. But there's not a clear buy point. You want to get, I would say, at least get above the 50-day line, which would probably also mean getting back above the 21-day line by the time it crossed back over, because that's coming down. That would at least give you some sense of breaking support, because there's probably a lot of people who bought up in the last couple of months that are down now, or at least the last month and a half. This is why we were saying, hey, you want to buy Tesla right. There have been times to buy it, and if you buy it right, there have been breakouts that have been good. There's been lots of points where it's actually fairly legitimate buy points. You do that, that's been pretty successful from there. But if you buy it, in other places, you'll often be down significantly. So, and you don't want to be down significantly with a stock that has such a great run. So yeah, in short, I would not say this is a proper buy point. Could it work? Sure, you could buy anywhere, and if the stock could go up. But I think.
But that's not trading with an edge.
That's not trading with an edge. You're just sort of buying. I'm just hoping the momentum will carry me this way, but you don't know where the momentum will go.
That's right. We want to be putting the odds in our favor. And when we're seeing the volatility in the market, like we're seeing after periods of being quite extended, a lot of froth out there, a good amount of euphoria. A lot of the top performing stocks so far this year have what Jason Thompson, William O'Neill, O'Neill Capital Management portfolio manager said in the junk pile. So that's a lot of what we've been seeing making the big moves this year. So with all of that in mind, we need proper setups for a lot of these stocks. So only time will tell when we will get them, Ed. But tell us about the setup for Ford here. A fellow automaker shook off its losses early on in the session and was able to close down less than 1%, seeing a rebound off of that 21-day.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of traditional real economy stocks do well. So this is definitely in that category. It actually, since it's rebounded now off the 21-day a couple of times, since running up from its last breakout, it's sort of traded fairly tightly in the last several weeks. On a weekly chart, it actually has a 3 weeks tight based off of that 1204 would be the 1214 would be the buy point. And another few days, if it could get to the end of this week, it would have an admittedly not very flat looking flat base, but it would be within 15%. So at the end of this week, it could have a flat base, and that would give it a buy point that would be just above the left-hand side of that little consolidation. So, I mean, profits are turning around. There is now sort of this EV halo. They're getting some of that, that kind of sense of being EV play, while demand is strong for these automakers, traditional trucks, and and they're not valued very high. So some people are going into them. So these have been trading really well. GM is doing well, and just a lot of cyclical names are doing well right now.
Yeah. So what did we learn about today, do you think, in terms of the rotation that we've been seeing, most notably over the last couple of weeks?
Well, it would certainly look very strong at the beginning of the day when the NASDAQ was down more than 3%, but it's been going on for a couple of weeks now. I mean, the NASDAQ has been coming down. The Dow is basically flat. We're seeing stocks like Disney, JP Morgan, Caterpillar, they're sort of climbing, continuing. They look like they're in a strong market rally. There doesn't look to be any kind of sell-off. There is no sell-off in that sector. In many ways, this isn't a market pullback. This is a growth stock retreat, or a rotation out of those. And will that continue? Maybe. So I think that's something that investors should keep in mind and think, well, this is a reason why you want to have that diversity of leadership. It doesn't have to be Ford. It could be a Disney. It could be other things that, if you had a more of a diverse portfolio, probably the last couple of days would be easier to handle.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And here is a look at the Dow up for the week. Nice upside reversal today, coming down to its 21-day line. So while it seems like, at least visually, the last pullback was a little more severe for the Dow, it's been even more resilient in the pullback that we've seen from last week that has bled over to this week.
Yeah, that's definitely a major factor, major element of this recent action.
All right, and now let's take a look at Microsoft. MSFT had a gap down yesterday and was able to close down just about 0.5% today. Didn't quite come down to its 50-day line, but it did come down and touch that 10-week line. So give us some perspective to this chart here, because it looked like Microsoft was just starting to perk back up after kind of biding its time in this consolidation.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. Like, it was nice. One nice thing, see, a lot of growth stocks had fallen like 8, 10, 12%, sometimes some of that today, and then rebounded. But boy, would that be difficult to deal with. Today, okay, it wasn't great, especially when you combine yesterday and today, but it wasn't like this jaw-dropping loss. So it rebounded off of that area. It closed above the official buy zone of 232.96. As you were pointing on the weekly chart, there were sort of early entries around 227 or 228. And so it sort of came down to those levels or close to it. So it didn't even undercut those levels. So this would have been easier to hold. I mean, when other stocks like Apple had sort of skidded below and then fallen below their 50-day line and then fell today, this one wasn't, obviously you want stocks to go up, but, this was much easier to take, and it found support where you'd like it to. It closed relatively well. So this is looking still relatively positive in that tech sphere.
Yeah. So if you do have a profit in Microsoft, is this something, if we did see the market rebound strongly tomorrow, that investors might be interested in adding some shares to a position?
Boy, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's possible. It also depends on how far Microsoft is there, though. I mean, it could be forming sort of a new short consolidation. I suppose in some crazy world, it could rally by the end of this week and form some kind of 3 weeks tight, and that would be one heck of a 3 weeks tight. So yeah, I mean, I suppose if it rebounded, it's in the buy zone, and the market was there, you might move up depending on your level of exposure overall, because you may not want to get too exposed, because we could rally and then reverse lower again. So you don't want to instantly just be sure that everything is in great situation, but this is definitely holding up better than a lot of other stocks.
That's right. And, I think it's yet another reason today that shows why we have advocated that selling isn't an all or nothing proposition, right? We've, in most cases, not all, but we like waiting till the end of the week. We don't want to have knee jerk reactions. So, for investors out there who did maybe sell at today's lows, what should they be thinking right now? Hopefully, if the stocks that they are in, those charts are still intact on a weekly basis, still holding above or even around the 10-week line, what would you be telling them right now?
Yeah, some of the charts still look pretty damaged. Like a Tesla, per se, is still below the 50-day line, 10-week line. I mean, so so that still doesn't look so great. So it sort of depends on the chart pattern. And because
Exactly.
I don't want to go back to it. There's other stocks that have rebounded back into the buy zone, like Dynatrace. Boy, that would have been really hard to hold, because this was way below the buy point. I don't know. I mean, it's just it depends on the chart, how much it comes in there. If they were down 7, 8%, that sometimes happens. Sometimes you just have to sell. The point isn't always to be right. The point is to be right more often than not, and to avoid a catastrophic loss. I mean, so
That's right.
there's no system that's going to be perfect. It's hard to deal with a situation when a stock falls 10 to 12% intraday, plunges well below your sell rules, and then bounces back. Those days are going to happen.
Mhm.
But if you have sound rules and take profits, maybe partial profits early in certain situations that we've been talking about in the last few weeks, you can still come out of it, in a good situation.
Exactly. Helpful advice there, Ed. Really appreciate you putting today's action into perspective for us. And more perspective can be found in today's big picture column. So make sure you head to investors.com, our homepage, and check that out. You can also get to it by going to our market trend tab on investors.com for more information about what went down today. And you know that the conversation is also going to continue tomorrow morning on IBD Live, Ed. Once again, our morning was very interesting today, but I think it was great to provide some perspective. And again, I feel like we do try to always underscore the need to be flexible and nimble in this market.
Yeah, I mean, IBD Live is just invaluable. I really enjoyed watching today with Jason Thompson. Looking forward to tomorrow's show for sure.
All right, investors.com/IBD Live for more information on that. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you back here tomorrow.